Welcome to my podcast. Today I will be the Armchair GM for the Detroit Red Wings and Edmonton Oilers. I will first be the Armchair GM for the Detroit Red Wings, then I will move on and be the Armchair GM for the Edmonton Oilers. The Detroit Red Wings are at a crossroad for the first time in 25 plus years. They have an older group of core players and a group of young, good players that are not yet ready to take the throne as core players of a team that are desperately in need of players to be go-to players. What will the Detroit Red Wings do this offseason? Because they have a lot of old, overpaid players, and the status of Tatar-Datsyuk is still very much up in the air. So they are, regardless of whether Tatar-Datsyuk decides to play or not, they are still on the hook for $7 million of his salary. So that is the interesting thing surrounding the Detroit Red Wings. The status of Tatar-Datsyuk, whether he returns or not. But whether or not Tatar-Datsyuk decides to return and play for the Red Wings, they have to plan for the future and build a team. So, without further ado, these are the key moves that they should be making. The key UFAs for this offseason are Brad Richards, Darren Helm, Kyle Quincy, and Joakim Anderson, as well as Drew Miller. The key RFAs are Peter Mrazek, Danny-DeKeyser, Timo Pulkkinnen, and Riley Sheahan. Due to the fact Peter Mrazek has emerged as a true number one goalie in the NHL, they should let him take the throne as a true number one goalie. And with some goalies in the farm system ready to come up to be backup to Peter Mrazek, they should take this opportunity to trade Jimmy Howard, as well as the free agent class for goalies this year is very weak. So this opens up the opportunity or window for the Detroit Red Wings to trade Jimmy Howard and his $5.5 million of cap space a year, which he's due for the next, I believe, 4 years. A team that would be interested in Jimmy Howard would be the Ottawa Senators. And in return for Jimmy Howard, they would trade Andrew Hammond, Mark Borowiecki, and the third-round pick in this coming draft for Jimmy Howard. The reason why they would make this trade is because they want a steadier backup for Craig Anderson, and you just can't trust Andrew Hammond. Not that Jimmy Howard is that much better than Andrew Hammond, but Jimmy Howard has more NHL experience, and at least you can rely on him and put him in games. For the Detroit Red Wings, it makes sense because Andrew Hammond is way cheaper. Mark Borowiecki is a big physical defenseman that you can plug into your lineup, and third round pick is nice as well. After trading Jimmy Howard, you free up some cap space. You use that cap space to re-sign Peter Mrazek to a 3-year deal. The reason why you do a 3-year deal is because it's a good bridge deal. You don't want to commit long-term yet because you have a lot of long-term contracts committed to a lot of players already. And if you sign Peter Mrazek to a long-term deal and he's not ready yet, then you're going to be overpaying the guy. But if you let him progress and you sign him to like a $3 or $4 million deal for 3 years, I think that's a good bridge contract. resign Danny DeKeyser for a long-term contract is the next one. Danny DeKeyser is going to be the future for the Red Wings at the back end because Mike Green is an overpaid second power play specialist, and he cannot be trusted with being a top pair defenseman. Hendricks-Kronwall has declined a lot, and you're not going to trust Jonathan Eriksson with top pair duties. So Danny DeKeyser is going to be the future. Other players you should bring back are Pouliot-McDavid-Petan, Joachim Anderson, and Riley Sheahan. They should all get 2-year deals. And Drew Miller should be back on a 1-year deal. Ryan Sproul should also be back up on the team on a 1-year deal. Not on a 1-year deal. He should be recalled from the AHL. Because the defense needs a player that can step in. Because right now, they have Brendan Smith and Mike Green on the third pair. And I don't know how much you trust Brendan Smith with those minutes. And if Jonathan Eriksson gets injured, Ryan Sproul can step in as well. And Kronwall missed time as well this past season. So Ryan Sproul would be a good fit-in for injured defensemen. So after all is said and done in the offseason, the Detroit Red Wings would have added Andrew Hammond, Mark Borowiecki, and Ryan Sproul. They would have lost Jimmy Howard, Brad Richards, Darren Helm, and Kyle Quincy. This is how the Detroit Red Wings roster is going to look without Datsyuk. The first line is going to be Justin Abdelkader, Hendricks-Letestu-Kassian, and Nyqvist. Second line is going to be Riley Sheahan, Dylan Larkin, and Thomas Tatar. Third line is going to be Athanansiou, Luke-Glendening, and Pouliot-McDavid-Petan. Fourth line is going to be Drew Miller, Joachim Anderson, and Thomas Tatar. Not Thomas Tatar, it's Thomas Jurco. This is how the forward lines is going to be looking with Tatar-Datsyuk. First line is Justin Abdelkader, Hendricks-Letestu-Kassian, and Dylan Larkin. Second line is Thomas Tatar, Tatar-Datsyuk, and Nyqvist. Third line, Riley Sheahan, Luke-Glendening, and Pouliot-McDavid-Petan. Fourth line, Drew Miller, Joachim Anderson, and Athanansiou. As you can see, the team is definitely better with Tatar-Datsyuk. They really need to add a center in free agency. Even if it's not Steven Stamkos, they need to add a center if Datsyuk decides to leave. Because as good as Dylan Larkin may be, that's a lot of pressure to add on a 20-year-old in his second year in the NHL as their second line center. That's a lot of pressure. The defense is going to look something like this. Mark Borowiecki and Danny DeKeyser would be the first pair. Jonathan Eriksson and Hendricks-Kronwall will be the second pair. Brendan Smith and Mike Green would be the third pair. Ryan Sproul would be the defenseman rotating in. And the goalies would be Peter Mrazek and Andrew Hammond. So that's the Detroit Red Wings Armchair GM. Now I'm moving on to the Edmonton Oilers Armchair GM. After yet another disappointing season, the Edmonton Oilers find themselves in familiar territory again, yet in position to win yet another draft lottery. The Oilers have a lot of offensive talent, but it cannot mask how bad the defense is, and Cam Talbot just can't bail out their horrible defense. Expect some big changes in Edmonton because only 2 players are safe in the offseason, and that is Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. The key UFAs for Edmonton are Nikita Nikitin, Eriksson-Kronwall, and Adam Party. None of those players are going to be brought back. The key RFAs are Kassian, Iro Takarainen, and Adam Glendening. The first thing the Edmonton Oilers are going to try to do is try to move Andrew Ference. Yes, I know that's a tough task to do because Andrew Ference isn't even playing. He has a $3 million cap hit. And you're going to have to work a miracle to try to get rid of him to a contending team. But stranger things have happened. So if you can't move him to a contending team, you would have to try to buy him out or bury him in the AHL. The next thing is try to move Nail Yakupov. You can't really sell high on Yakupov right now because his value is not very high. All you can demand for him is picks or someone that hasn't panned out either. Yakupov to the Leafs for Scott Harrington and a second-round pick in 2017, I think is a pretty adequate return. Scott Harrington is a mid-level prospect, and a second-round pick in 2017, I think, is more than the Oilers can demand for Yakupov at this point. I heard that they were trying to get a first-round pick, but that's a pipe dream at this point. This next move is a very bold move for the Oilers to make. But if the Oilers do not win the draft lottery and somehow luck out into winning Austin Matthews, they should trade their first-round pick in 2016 to the Tampa Bay Lightning and try to acquire Andrei Vasilevskiy. The reason why you try to do this is because then you can tandem him with Cam Talbot, and Andrei Vasilevskiy has a higher ceiling than Cam Talbot, and Andrei Vasilevskiy has some superstar potential in him. Therefore, you get your goaltender of the future and a goaltender that can possibly bail out your horrible defense. It would make sense for both teams because they have obviously already had their goaltender of the future in Ben Bishop, and they want to re-sign him, and they won't have money to re-sign Vasilevskiy, so they might as well get something for him. And a first-round pick of 2016 for the Oilers is a great return for them. So it would make sense for both teams to make this trade. At this point of Vasilevskiy's career, it is a hefty price to pay for him. But in the future, in about 3 years, it would be a good bargain. Because premier goalies are hard to get. The next trade would be to trade Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Of all the core key players the Oilers have, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is the most expendable because of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. They can make a formidable 1-2 punch down the middle. And with the injury history that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has, that kind of makes him more expendable than, say, a Taylor Hall or Jordan Eberle, because Jordan Eberle you can just plug in with any of the top 6 players and he can be a goal scorer. And Taylor Hall you would have to get a lot back for him in order to trade him. So Ryan Nugent-Hopkins would be more expendable than those two. And also, Eberle and Hall have a more affordable cap hit, even though it's the same cap hit. I feel like Nugent Hopkins is overpaid due to the fact he never stays in the lineup. So you would rather be paying $6 million for players that actually play than players that are in and out of the lineup all the time. And another reason to trade Nugent Hopkins is because centers are worth good trade value in the league, because the league is now built around centers. A team that would be interested in Ryan Nugent-Hopkins are the Winnipeg Jets. So in a big blockbuster deal, the Edmonton Oilers would send Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Lori Korpikoski to and a third-round pick in 2016 to the Winnipeg Jets for Jacob Trouba, Nick Petan, Alex Burmistrov, and a second-round pick in 2017 that's conditional if the Jets make the playoffs with Nugent-Hopkins on the team. This is a huge trade because it helps both teams. You give the Jets a good 1-2-3 down the middle with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Scheifele, and Brian Little. And then you also give Edmonton the defenseman they desperately needed in Jacob Trouba. And you also add Nick Petan, who played in World Juniors with Connor McDavid, as well as Alex Burmistrov, who can play in the top six or as a depth player. And the conditional second-round pick may be a lot, but in the Western Conference, the Jets making the playoffs is quite slim. So I think this is a really solid trade for both teams. Next is to re-sign some depth players in Armchair and Adam Glendening for 1-year deals. Oesterle and is going to be re-signed for 2 years. They should bring back Maroon-Archobello as a depth player for 1 year. So after all is said and done, after a few blockbusters, they would have added Andrei Vasilevskiy and Maroon-Archobello, as well as Jacob Trouba, Nick Petan, and Alex Burmistrov. They would have lost Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Nail Yakupov, Andrew Ference, Adam Pardy, Eric Ryba, and Nikita Nikitin. This is how the Oilers roster would look like after this overhaul of the roster. The first line would be Benoit Pouliot, Connor McDavid, and Nick Petan. The second line would be Taylor Hall, Leon-Draisaitl, Jordan Eberle. Third line would be Patrick Maroon, Maroon-Archobello, and Alex Burmistrov. Third line, Matt Hendricks, Letestu-Kassian. The defense, first defensive pair, Darnell Nurse and Nurse-Klefbom. Second defensive pair, Andrei Sekera, Jacob Trouba. Third defensive pair, Brandon Davison and Mark Fayne. The seventh defenseman is Oesterle. The goaltenders are Andrei Vasilevskiy and Cam Talbot. So that's the Armchair GM for the Edmonton Oilers. So that will conclude it for the Armchair GM and for the Detroit Red Wings and Edmonton Oilers, and that will do it for this podcast as well. Next episode, I'll be the Armchair GM for the Florida Panthers and the Los Angeles Kings.